in carrying out teaching, research, and consultancy in the area of food processing technology. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing questions into the chat box as well as the WhatsApp group. You may resend your question at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the question and answering session at the end of session. Now, right now, I would like to introduce our second resource person, that is Professor Dr. Madhukar Govindrao Bhotmange sir. He is having 35 years of teaching experience as well as 34 years of research experience. He was working as a head of food technology at Laxminarayan Institute of Technology, RTM Nagpur University, Nagpur. Professor Dr. Madhukar Govindrao Bhotmange sir's research areas include food technology as well as the biotechnology. He published more than 14 national and 11 international research papers and attended 50 various conferences.
हाँ राहू दे सर टॉप शेअरिंग मी करतो हां
You know, sir.
येस
He had received 8 Best Paper Awards. He delivered more than 21 guest lectures on various topics. He has a very good knowledge of more than 7 subjects. For example, food chemistry, food processing and preservation, analysis of the food, food biotechnology, chemistry, biochemistry of the foods, and food biotechnology, etc. Also, he was actively involved in the industrial research projects as well as the consultancy projects. Right now, we all are eagerly waiting for the valuable guidance from you, sir. Over to you, Professor Dr. Madhukar Govindra Bhotmange, sir.
I will share my PPT.
Yes, sir. We will wait for a minute. Sorry.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Screen is visible.
yes visible
Visible.
Yeah.
Click on the slideshow, sir. Yes.
Is it showing the slideshow?
Yes. You can click the double click on that slideshow.
yes
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
it is
sir.
visible. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Continue, sir.
yes now it's visible
Good afternoon, all the participants, and welcome to this Atal sponsored faculty development program. The organizers have allotted the topic to me as a meat processing. As the organizers know, I teach meat processing and they are well versed because 2 or 3 are my own students as organizers. So when we talk about the meat processing, the meat is always considered to be as a food since ancient times. If we look into the history of the meat, we find that the meat is being consumed by people from the Egypt since 3400 BC. In China, it is around 2900 BC. So it's a very ancient type of the food. When we talk about the food, we need the basic ingredients in the food products that are carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and lots of minerals and vitamins. Meat is one of them, good source of all these ingredients or components. The definition, what the WHO has given for meat is it is the flesh of animal, flesh of warm-blooded, four-legged animal, which is closely related to man biochemical. This word is very important, that is closely related to man biochemical. We cannot consider all the types of the flesh from the animal to be considered as a food. But the flesh which is related to man biochemically is considered to be edible flesh of the animal, and that is to be considered as the meat. So, and also this meat or the flesh of the animal should have a proper nutritional value. But when we talk about the meat as a food, our Indian population is mostly relying on the vegetable or the what we call the food from the vegetable sources. We see the statistics, we find that the European countries are having more consumption of the meat as compared to our Indian population. The roughly figure, if we take that the meat consumption from European countries is 65 kgs per annum per capita consumption. Whereas in case of the Indian population, it is around 1.5 to 2 kgs per annum. So our consumption from the meat is very, very less. Another important point is from the economy point of view, we find that the meat industry is considered to be the third largest industry in America after automobile and steel industry. So meat industry is the third largest industry in America, whereas in India, we find that meat industry is not progressing into that pace. So this is, and that's why we have to focus towards the meat industry. But nowadays, another aspect come into picture, that is the vegan foods. So this will also hamper the growth of the meat industry. If we consider the animals, what we say that the warm-blooded, four-legged animals that are the sources of the meat. So the livestock, which is being considered as a source, are broadly classified into four categories like bovine, ovine, porcine, and birds. Bovine means the bigger animals like cattle, buffalo. These are the bovine animals. Ovines are the smaller animals, four-legged smaller animals like sheep, goat. These are the ovines. And the porcine, the most prominent example is the pig, lamb. Pig is the most prominent one. Lamb is also comes under the ovine categories. And the birds, we know that all the bird category is considered as the birds. So these meat industry cannot progress alone. It
இப்படி போய்
is
என்ன பிரயோஜனம்
always tagged
இப்படி பண்ணி என்ன பண்ண முடியும்
with the
அதான் சார்
dairy
இப்படி பண்ணி என்ன
industry.
பண்ண முடியும்
The this industry is broadly classified, or the cattle industry or the bovine industry, that is the buffalo and cattle are mainly divided into two types, that is the meat animals and the dairy animals. The dairy industry gives importance to the breeding of the maximum breeding of the animals, which will give maximum milk. and maximum butter fat. In the So this dairy industry's definition is different, whereas for from the meat industry point of view, their focus is different. But they must go with hands in hand. Then and then only these animals are properly utilized. When we classify these bovine animals from the dairy point of view, the male stocks are broadly classified into three categories, that is the calves, steers, and bulls. Calves are slaughtered for wills if they are not seems to be good sources, because the male stock is not needed in dairy industry as well as the meat industry in a larger quantity, and that's why the good breed is being retained to develop as a bulls, and the calves are generally slaughtered as will. Steers, the middle-aged animal, virtually it is non-produced. They are very negligible because we do not save the calves to become bulls in a larger quantities, and that's why steers may not be there. The bulls are then again analyzed for their reproducing breeding capacities, and that stocks are uh, retained, that stocks are preserved, and the rest is being slaughtered as the beef. As long as these female stocks, they are also classified as calves, heifers, and the dairy cows. The calves are saved to replace dairy and breeding stock and ballast, that is, which seems to be having not good as long as dairy industry is concerned, or the breeding point of view is concerned, or the meat industry, that calves are slaughtered as a wheel. Heifers, again, the middle-aged animal will not is a negligible quantity as in case of the steers, and the dairy cows, the best stock is saved for dairy production. They are slaughtered at the end of their economic dairy age. So this is the dairy point of view. From meat point of view, again the male stocks are classified as the calves, steers, and bulls, where the calves are mostly saved for steers and bulls. The steers are castrated and raised to high quality beef, and bulls, the top quality is saved for breeding, whereas the other quality is slaughtered at the end of their economic life, that is as a beef. Female stocks, in case of the calves, very limited slaughtering takes place, whereas heifers depends on the feed price and live market, and the cows are best stock to be saved for breeding purposes. So this way, the dairy industry as well as the meat industry saves the livestock for their economic purposes. As long as or the composition of the meat is analyzed, it is observed that the meat concept has another 62% of the water. That is it's a averaged animal meat from the averaged animals. Let's say 62% water, 17% protein, fat 20%, minerals 1%. Whereas in cases of goat, moisture is more. Water is 74.2, protein 21.4, fat 3.6, minerals 1.1, calcium and phosphorus there. So in general, the proteins ranges between 17 to 22%. Fat in the meat is the higher quantity is 20%, whereas in goat meat it is 3.6%. In case of the birds, it is also still less. And these are the good sources of minerals, calcium, phosphorus. These are So when we talk about the meat industry, we need to study the postmortem changes, how the postmortem changes takes place. Because for getting the meat, we have to slaughter the animal, we have to make the animal dead, and these animals, what changes that takes place uh, after the death of the animal is most important. Here we say that the death animal is dead. It means that the blood circulation stops. If the, so, when the blood circulation stops, the resulting oxygen supply fails. That means the uh, oxygen will not be supplied to the animal, and therefore the oxidation reduction potential is falling down. It falls. As a result of oxidation potential going down and down, the respiratory activity stops. And in the respiratory activity stops means the conversion of glycogen to carbon dioxide stops. On the same point, the another cycle starts, and that is the glycolysis cycle. Because glycogen will be converted to somewhere else. When there was a supply of oxygen, the glycogen was converting into the carbon dioxide. What is glycogen? Glycogen is the reserved carbohydrate in the animal. So this glycogen, when the oxygen supply stops, it gets converted to the lactic acid. As a result, when the lactic acid is produced from the glycogen, there is a fall in pH. pH falls, and due to the fall in pH, due to the lowering the pH, the denaturation of proteins takes place. The cathepsins gets generated or liberated and gets activated. And the protein denaturation will lead to discoloration and exudation of the muscles. That will give the protein breakdown, and bacterial growth occurs if it is not attended properly. There is the accumulation of various metabolites, flavors, precursors, everything is. So in between, when this glycogen to conversion of glycogen to carbon dioxide stops, the ATP and creatine phosphate level falls down. The ATP and creatine phosphate level when falls down, then there is a onset of rigor. You must be knowing that after the death of the animal, the structure or the muscle structures, the muscles get stiffened after certain time. This stiffening of the muscles are termed as setting the rigor. Before that period, we call the pre-rigor stage. After that stiffening, we call it as a post-rigor stage. So this is the dissolution of rigor also. So this are the indicative of how much time is being lapsed after the death of the animal. So that gives different chemical composition, different chemical interactions that takes place after the death of the animal, and that changes, that interactions need to be considered while checking the quality of the meat. Now, when we talk about the food from the animal flesh, there are certain standardization. The cuts, what we call the cuts, meat cuts. Throughout the world, these are the standard cuts, standard nomenclature giving to the different parts of the animal flesh. The animal is separated into two parts after the death between 12th and 13th rib. The 1 to 12th rib is considered to be foresaddle, or it is also called as the, and this one 13th ribs to onward, it is called a hind saddle, or it is also called as forequarter and hind quarter. In beef, that is in the bovines, it is called forequarter and hind quarter. In case of ovines, it is called foresaddle and hind saddle. So likewise, these the major cut or animal gets separated into forequarter and hind quarter in between 12th and 13th ribs of the animal, and this forequarter, the flesh of this forequarter is contributing 52%, whereas the hind quarter contributes to 48%. In forequarter, there will be a ribs, chucks, shank, brisket, and short plate. That is this forequarter, and it contributes to 52%. Whereas in hind quarter, you get round, sirloin, short loin, flank, kidneys, and everything. That will be 48%. Similarly, as I told you, the younger animal at the calf stage, if the animal is slaughtered, that meat is called the veal, and that is again divided into two parts between the 12th and 13th rib, forequarter and hind quarter. It is the quantum of the meat is 50% here. The third one is the pork. The pork, these are the wholesale cuts of the pork, because you will find when you go into the shop for purchasing the meat, some will have an interest in the uh, loin, some will have an interest with the belly, some will have an interest with the shoulder. So this way, and of course, these cuts will have a different compositions. So that way, the people has the taste buds, or people uh, judges the quality of the meat by taking different these cuts. So these are the wholesale cuts of the pork, that, and these are the wholesale cuts of the lamb. So this is the fore saddle, this is the hind saddle. Same way in case of the pork. From this point, it is being divided into two, the fore saddle and the hind saddle. Now, the processing of meat. How the meat processing takes place. The animals which are selected for slaughtering, the animals which are considered as a source for meat, are brought to the lairage. This is the abattoir layout where the animals are brought into the lairage from different sources, different locations. The animals are brought to the industry and they are kept in the lairds. Then these are then brought to the holding space. That is the second stage or second place where the animals are treated, and then trippery, then stunning, and all this, the slaughter hall, and this is the broader structure of the any meat industry, the that is there. Now, what is this? The livestock. The first important step is the selection of the animals. The animals are selected from those brought to the abattoir in the Larry's pen on the basis of their ante-mortem examination. So, what is this ante-mortem examination? This ante-mortem examination is conducted by the veterinary doctors for the purposes of whether the animal is fit for consumption, whether the animal do not have any contagious diseases, whether the animal do not have any zoonotic diseases. So ante-mortem examination is a very important examination where the animals are analyzed for safety of the consumer. If the animal is having some problems with their health, whether they have a contagious diseases or zoonotic diseases or any other diseases which are not considered to be safe for consumption, these animals are rejected. So this ante-mortem examination is very much important, which ensures this during this period the animal is rested. This resting is very, very important. Why rest is given? As we have studied in the post-mortem examination, and we say that glycogen is named as the reserved carbohydrate of the animal. The reserved carbohydrate of the animal means what? This glycogen, we have seen that converted into the carbon dioxide when the animal is alive, that is the oxygen supply is continued. Then this glycogen, the reserved carbohydrate, is converted into the carbon dioxide. But when the animal is dead, that means the oxygen supply is cut off. There is no oxygen supply. So anaerobic oxidation takes place. Anaerobic conversion takes place where the glycogen gets converted into the lactic acid. Whatever the amount of glycogen is there, this glycogen which will be completely converted to the lactic acid. As a result, the pH fall. That means if higher the glycogen, higher will be the lactic acid produced or liberated, and this lactic acid will have a impact on the pH. So higher amount of liberation of lactic acid, then there will be a low pH, and this pH influences the quality of the meat. pH influences the color of the meat, and therefore, and we desire that we need red color of the meat. We desire the proper lactic acid to be produced, and therefore this resting is important, because if the animal is rested, there will be a good amount of glycogen present in the body of the animal. So rested animal will give you a good amount of lactic acid in the glycolysis cycle. That will help you to retain the red color of the meat. That will help you to retain the structure of the meat, muscles. And that's why rest is important. If the animal is not rested, what will happen? The glycogen level will go down. Well, because at the live stage, oxygen supply will continue. And this oxygen supply, this breathed oxygen, will be utilized for converting glycogen to carbon dioxide. So the remaining glycogen will be less if the animal is not rested, and therefore that will lead to lesser production of lactic acid. That means there will not be a proper pH. pH will be above the desired limit. So you will not get the proper color and texture of the muscles. And therefore, this resting is important. And so animals are rested at least 24 hours before slaughter. This is the very, very important step. Then animal is stunned. Stunning is done. Stunning means making the animal unconscious. Why it is needed? It is needed because the animals are the big animals. Maybe a buffalo, cattle, big sized animals, or a middle sized animal. These animals, when you are going to slaughter, they will struggle for their life. And that's why they may pose danger to the operator. And that's why the animal has to be made unconscious. Therefore, and this is the one step that he will not pose any threat, any danger to the operator. One thing. Another one is before slaughter, if we make an animal unconscious, he will not struggle for his life at the time of slaughter. He will not resist. He will not exercise. He will not oppose the slaughter. And therefore, due to stunning, we can reserve the glycogen, which will be utilized for converting to lactic acid. Thereby, we will achieve the proper pH and the texture of the muscles. So that's why this stunning is very, very important. And stunning is done. There are three methods, different methods of stunning. The most of the stunning practices are hammering the head of the animal, or making unconscious by making use of the pistol, or there is a giving the electric shock to the animal, or the another one is exposure to the carbon dioxide. So these are the four different types of the stunning practices that are being selected on the basis of size of the animal, nature of the animal. So the stunning is done. That means the animal gets unconscious due to these four either of the practices. Either of the practices, it's not in combination. In case of the pork or the pig, we find that the electric shock is sufficient. Or sometimes they are exposed to the carbon dioxide room. The animals are passed through the CO2 filled room. So when this moved to the CO2 exposed room, animal gets unconscious, fell on the conveyor and then moved. So stunning is important from the point of view maintaining the glycogen level and safety of the operator. Then the next step is staking. Staking means, in general, we call it as a slaughtering. The animals are slaughtered by cutting the jugular vein. These stunned animals are slaughtered in two different positions. One is the horizontal position, that is prone position, and the another one is the hanging position. So at the staking, the animals are hanged through legs. Legs are hanged to the rail, and animals are upside down. That is, his head is at the bottom and legs are at the top. That is the hanging position. And prone position means the horizontal position. The conveyor will move. The animal will move through conveyor on the table. The horizontal position, that's called the prone position. The difference between these two, as far as the advantages and disadvantages are concerned, that the animals are slaughtered always in the hanging position. The advantage is, when we slaughter the animal, when we cut his jugular vein, and if the animal is hanged, the proper removal of blood takes place very fast. And as you know, blood is one of the good source of contamination, good source of growth of the organism. That's why the care is taken to remove as much blood as fast as possible. And therefore, the hanging position is advantageous to the prone position. In the prone position, the blood is not removed completely sometimes. But in the hanging position, the blood comes through cavity also, and that time when we cut the jugular vein, that time the animal is alive, he's breathing. So the his heart was pumping, and so blood comes very fast. So hanging position is usually uh, adopted or practiced. Then the bleeding. So that means the bleeding. I told you about bleeding. So bleed. The animal is bleed completely. Then the animal is washed. Here the carcass. Now we call it as a carcass. After the death of the animal, just like in case of the human being, we always say when the person is before death, we call him as a with his name, and after that we call it the body. Same way here also, after slaughtering, after the death of the animal, we call it the carcass. So this carcass, after removal of complete blood, is washed, so that whatever the retaining blood was there, whatever the residual blood is there, that will be washed out completely. Then the next step is here, after washing, is deskinning. The skin is removed. The animal is hanged to the rail, and the skin is removed by blowing the air. Because it pick the very small portion of the skin is picked up in the, and then air is blown so that the skin gets detached from the carcass very fast. Though this skinning is done, complete skinning is removed, because skin will have a small tiny hairs, so that is not desirable with the meat, and so skin is removed completely. So deskinning is done, and then the dressing. Here, before dressing, after washing the carcass, there is a post-mortem examination. We had seen the ante-mortem examination, now the post-mortem examination. In this post-mortem examination, what is done? The viscera is removed from the carcass, head is removed, and the body is rare. All these three components are rigorously examined for any kind of the diseases, animal diseases, any kind of the contagious diseases, zoonotic diseases. We had seen the ante-mortem examination before slaughter of the animal, but maybe some may not be visible at the outside the surface of the animal. They may have some contamination at the inside the animal, and that's why this post-mortem examination is also important, that is done by the veterinary doctors. So once it is cleared, then only it will go for the. So this, after washing, the dressing is done. That means all the finishing touches are given. Evisceration means the viscera is removed. This viscera, head, and this carcass is taken together for this post-mortem examination. So this will give you the nutritional status, or one can say the medical status of the animal which was slaughtered. Then it is sent for halving or quartering as per what we have seen in the cuts, meat cuts. What kinds of cuts you want, that kinds of cuts are made here, halving and quartering. Or bigger cuts are made. These cuts are then again washed with clean water, running water sometimes, so that all the texture or your muscles, animal muscles, or these carcasses, various cuts, will be free from any impurities, any blood stains, anything. So it is completely washed, then it is sent for chilling. They are kept at the minus 10 degrees to minus 15 degrees centigrade. And whenever then the demand occurs, then the smaller cuts are made, and these smaller cuts are then we considered as a meat. So this is the complete process. That here the most important one is the ante-mortem examination and post-mortem examination. Resting, that is, animal should not exercise for his life. This will lead to lowering the glycogen. That will give us a lesser amount of the lactic acid, and that will not achieve the proper red color due to the pH development. So that is observed during resting and stunning. So during resting, we do not give any kind of the food. This is another important one. We only give water. Why? Because in his stomach, there may be some types of food there, earlier one. That will be excreted during that 24-hour resting. One thing. Another one is, if you give the rest, there is no input of the food, fresh food, but whatever the food is there, whatever is there. So here, this is also a stage of detoxification. 24 hours of resting, 24 hours we keep him on starving. That will lead to detoxification. If whatever the toxins or toxic substances are being absorbed by the uh, body or muscles, that will be removed during the 24-hour resting period. So that is also very important. So resting and stunning are important than the regular process of sticking, bleeding, and everything in there. So these two positions, resting and stunning, are biochemically very much important. Then in case of poultry, poultry, these are birds. These birds are classified into 5 categories: broiler, or it is also called a fryer, rooster, stag, stewing chicken, and cock. Which are the broilers or fryers? These are nothing but the chicken of 8 to 10 weeks of age. Their age is 8 to 10 weeks of either sex, whether a male or a female. Tender meated with soft, pliable, smooth, textured skin. At the age of 8 to 10 weeks, we get a soft, pliable, smooth, textured skin and flexible breastbone cartilage. In some of these locations, the bone is not being developed, and so the cartilages are there. So this is called the broiler or a fryer of male as well as the female birds. Then rooster is the young chicken having age 3 to 5 months. It is also of either sex, male or female, but slightly stronger one as compared to the fryer. So tender meated with soft, pliable, smooth textured skin. Smooth textured skin, less flexible. In the broiler or fryer, it was very flexible. Here, less flexible. Breastbone cartilage. It will have a cartilage, it will not have a bone at the certain points, but that is called the rooster. Then third category on the basis of age is the stag. Stag is called the male chicken. It's a male chicken less than 10 months of age. Little tough as compared to rooster and fryer, and dark flesh, because this will proceed towards the becoming the chicken. So dark flesh, tough and dark flesh, and will have hard breastbone cartilage. It is having the hard breastbone cartilage. Then fourth category is the steaming chicken, the full grown chicken we call, the mature chicken, having age more than 10 months, less tender, and non-flexible breastbone tip. This breastbone tip, where you might have seen if you had been gone to the purchase of the chicken after slaughter, the body cavity gets opened at the tip of the just below or just after the neck. So that is called breastbone. So in this case, in the stewing chicken, it is hard one. So that is the this breastbone tip. In earlier cases like stag or rooster or fryer, we call it the breastbone cartilage. Here we can call it as a breastbone tip. Then cock, it's a mature male chicken, full grown chicken, full grown and having age more than 10 months of age. So cock is the full grown male bird, stewing chicken, full grown female bird, whereas these are the growing stages, that is the fryer, rooster and stag of either sex. Now what are the steps that are being practiced in case of poultry processing? The first step is assembly. The assembly is important one. You must have observed that the birds are normally caught in night. So they are caught in night, loaded in the trucks. And why it is caught in night? Because they are easier to catch. They struggle less and settle down very easily in their coop in the night time. And that's why birds are normally captured or caught at the night time. And these are then proceeded towards the processing unit. Here also, then weighing is done. Here, weighing always is done in bulk, that the bird's laden truck minus the weight of the empty truck will give you the weight of the birds. So, weighing is done. This, then it comes to the slaughtering. Here also, just like in case of the meat industry, we practice 24 hours of the resting, fasting to the animal. Here also, at least 1 hour rest is given to the birds. And this, then slaughtering, the these are slaughtering again involves stunning and sticking or bleeding. During stunning, heart action should continue. The usually the electric shocker is used for stunning of the birds. So stunning also relaxes the muscles which holds the feathers. In case of the meat, we had a hairs. Here we have feathers. So feathers are removed very easily if the stunning is practiced very well. The turkey wing and feathers are then pulled from the carcasses immediately after stunning and bleeding. If the feathers are to be sold in the market separately, because some of the feathers of some of the birds are having the economic value, and so uh, the industry takes care of the feeders. The here stunning, one is the electric shocker, another may be a knife which will have electric current, will use for a, or sometimes the electric plate will be there and the bird's head will be touched to the electric plate and they will become unconscious, because here on the conveyor the birds are hanged and their head is at the bottom. To that head the electric shock is given. Maybe it will touch to the plate or it will have uh, a knife with electric current, and that will be, because these all practices, stunning practices, depends on the size of the bird. The next one is the bleeding. The bleeding, after slaughtering means after cutting the jugular vein or jowl, the and the windpipe and esophagus remain uncut. Esophagus as well as the windpipe is not cut, only the jugular vein is cut. So the bleeding is very fast. The removal of the blood is fast because removal of the blood is necessary. Complete removal of the blood is here. So that is done. And then in case of the bird's decapitation, that is the head is detached from the body or a carcass. This is most widely used in case of, here the technique is called kosher method. That is stunning and slitting the jugular vein is practiced. That is called a kosher method. So the modified kosher method is widely used where the birds are slaughtered. After bleeding, the scalding is done. The poultry or the birds or a carcass of the bird is dipped or immersed in the hot water at 71 to 82 degrees centigrade for 30 to 60 seconds. So due to dipping into hot water at 30 to 60, at 71 to 82 degrees centigrade for less than a minute, will expand and becomes slightly puffy under the skin. And therefore it is very easy to remove the feathers from the carcasses. At this temperature or at lower temperature, but lower temperature with extended time. But here, based on or depending on the size and weight of the bird, we have to decide the scalding temperature and time. Otherwise, the flesh becomes doughy and lifeless, and skin becomes discolored. And that's why if the bird is smaller one, the time temperature combination has to be maintained. If the temperature is high like 70 to 80 degrees centigrade, give it a 30 seconds or less than that, so that the flesh will not have a doughy texture. So this care has to be taken. Most probably, the carcasses are always scalded in 58 to 60 degrees centigrade temperature for 30 to 60 seconds, and that is called a sub-scalding. At this temperature, the flesh is not much affected, and feathers are also removed very easily and maintains the color of the poultry. In semi-scalding, the temperature maintained is around 50 degrees to 55 degrees centigrade, and the time requirement may be 90 seconds to 120 seconds. That is called semi-scalding. At this semi-scalding, the feathers removed with difficulty, and many times hand pinning is required. Now, what is hand pinning? When the scalding is done, that means when defeathering, feathers are removed from the skin. The Philippines remain there. These Philippines has to be removed if the bird is not properly scalded. If the bird is not dipped into the hot water with sufficient temperature, then this additional step is required. And that's why the requirement is we have to maintain the temperature time combination which will be suitable for that size and weight of the bird. That's scalding. So these feathers are removed after dipping into the hot water. These birds, after defeathering, may be dipped, or for defeathering also. Small Philippines are there, then you have to dip into a waxing, what we call is the waxing, where the all the smaller uh, plums or that are being removed very easily. So here the birds are placed into the hot wax and remove it immediately. Put into the cold water. So the wax which was adhered to or stick to the surface of the bird is removed by plucking immediately. And so the all the Philippines smaller feathers and will be removed. So that is needed, which is called an defeathering. And this used wax has to be sterilized later on, because there should not be any uh, contamination for a further batches, and therefore it is to be taken. Then singeing operation is there. Singeing means the fine philoplums may be there, fine feathers may be there on the surface of the skin. And that is singeing means we will expose the carcass to the flame so that these smaller will be removed completely, burnt away by singeing operation. So singeing is another important one which removes hairs, which removes smaller pins, philoplums, and carcasses will be free from all types of the feathers by exposing to the flame, because that is also moved on the conveyor itself. There is no need to remove the. Then this carcass is then washed with clean water. There should not be any blood stains. So all blood stains, any uh, waste material which come through uh, all digestive tract, everything is removed completely. So washing is very much important with the clean water. Then evisceration, removing the uh, digestive tract complete system. The body cavity is created at this evisceration. Then this carcass is chilled, graded, and then packed, or before sending to the chilling. After evisceration, again it is washed clearly and then make it into the pieces as per the standard cuts, standard pieces of the birds. They are chilled, then graded. There are graded gradation in international market is there, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. So that grading is done and then packing. Now the next is, these are the processing points, final points. The techniques are there, curing techniques are there, salting technique is there. Previously, this curing or a salting is was used to develop a new product. This is, as well as these were also considered as the preservative techniques. So salting or curing is done. These are basically a preservation techniques. This brings about the modifications of the meat that affects the flavor, color, tenderness of the meat. But when the modern methods of preservation like freezing or storing the meat at low temperature is now practiced, these curing methods are not being used for the preservation as a preservation technique, but these are being used for developing a new product with different color or flavor. The cured meat will have a different texture, different flavor, and that color and flavor of that cured meat will be achieved by using different types of the wood required for that smoking and everything. Curing is usually, there is a combination of different salts, of table salt, nitrites, nitrates, sugar, phosphorus, ascorbates. It's a combination of all these ingredients. Spices is also there, and each ingredient, curing ingredient, has its own role to play. Salt retards the microbial growth and gives flavor. Nitrite fixes the red color of the myoglobin and enhances flavor, as well as it inhibits the growth of Clostridium. Sugar helps to stabilize the color, counteracts saltiness, and it also adds flavor. Spices are also added to get specific flavor. Phosphates are added. Phosphates are added to increase the water binding capacity, water holding capacity. The ascorbates, the salts of ascorbic acid and erythrobic acid are usually used, which favors the development and stabilization of color and flavor. So these are the few. The ascorbates, normally we use the sodium ascorbate for curing the meat, which also used as an antioxidant. This also helps to reduce the nitrosamine formation and helps to fix the color. These ascorbates also takes part in reducing metamyoglobin to myoglobin. The ascorbates or ascorbic acid reacts chemically to the nitrite, increasing the yield of nitric oxide from nitrous oxide, which will have a red color. There are two types of the curing methods. One is dry curing, another one is the wet curing. Dry curing means these curing salt is rubbed on the surface of the cuts, and if the larger cuts are there, then we have to make the pinning in order to facilitate the penetration of this curing salt inside the cuts. So due to osmosis, the curing salt gets penetrated into the cut, and that helps to preserve, that helps to modify the product. Similarly, in case of wet curing, it is also called as the pickle curing. The pickle, the salt solution, curing salt solution is prepared, and to that the cuts are dipped, cuts are immersed into the salt solution and allow it to penetrate. So the after equilibrium is achieved, you get the salt solution gets penetrated inside the cuts. Of course, there are advantages as well as disadvantages of both the methods. The advantage of the dry curing is the method is safe and easy, whereas the disadvantages are end product becomes too salty sometimes and color gets lost. The cost of the curing is also high in case of a dry curing due to poor space utilization and higher labor requirement, and also higher inventory is involved because the process is slow. In wet curing, these disadvantages are overcome completely, and therefore in majority of the cases the wet curing is done, pickling is done. So in the tank, the pickle is prepared, that is the salt solution is prepared, and into that meat cuts are dipped, and we get a new product, new different product, pickled product, cured product, salt cured product, or with a different taste. That is the. Similarly, there is another one method, one treatment called smoking of it. This was also previously used for a preservation. We find in this smoking is used as a preservative or preservation action for a smaller fishes, small type of fishes that is being smoked, even at the present time. Previously, it was used. This smoking is used for as a preservative technique. So this smoking will give a newer product also, just like as curing. Smoking also gives a newer product. The color as well as the flavor is developed depending on which kind of the wood you prefer for smoking. And therefore, the primary purpose of the smoking of the meat is to develop a new product with flavor. Smoking also used for preservation sometimes. It also helps to get a different color. So here the wood smoke is given. In the industries you will find that there are the smoking chambers. At the bottom of the smoking chamber, the wood is burnt, the smoke gets evolved out, and that smoke is again, this meat cuts are exposed to that smoke. So smoke gets deposited on the surfaces of the meat, and whatever the elements, components present in the smoke gets deposited. So that helps to preserve that cut as well as give a new color flavor to the product. Just like in we majority of the time we say that चूल्हे पे बनाया हुआ खाना डिफरेंट आता है than the गैस पे बनाया हुआ, because दी चूल्हे में जो लकड़ियाँ जलाएंगे उसका जो फिनोलिक्स, उसका जो कंपोनेंट्स जो है वो प्रोडक्ट में मिक्स होते हैं और वी गेट ए some different flavors. Same way, this wood, कौन सा तरह का वुड वहाँ यूज होगा, उस तरह से उसका deposition on the surface of the meat cut will be there. So in the industry there are the different chambers for smoking. So at the bottom the wood is burnt, the smoke comes out, and that smoke gets there to adsorb to the meat cuts which was hanged on the top. So this smoking is one of the peculiar technique. Previously it was used for preservation, but now it is being used for the development of a new product, new varietal. Here, the phenolics gets deposited. There may be some acids, organic acids in the wood acids will also be deposited on the meat pieces, and so we get a different product with the or a product with a different taste and flavor. So this was about, in a brief, the meat processing. Thank you for patient hearing. And if you have any questions, please ask me.
Yes, session is now open for the question and answer session. Session is open for the question and answer section. So participant can ask the questions.
Yes, there is one question. What is the future of the vegan meat? Vegan meat, it is just like what we called soya nuggets was previously there. Same type of the product as the product which resembles as a meat, but is prepared from the vegetarian sources like soya beans and other protein legumes. So that is now when the people are attracting towards vegan foods, and so that will have a good opportunity for this vegan meat. But it is already in existence that soya nuggets are there to replace meat. At times, the vegetarians were being used, the soya nuggets. Yes, any questions?
Yes, session is open. So if you have any queries in your mind,
There
you
is
can
one
ask.
another one question in the chat box. All the meat should be processed in the same manner.
Yes, majority of the meat is processed in the same manner
Hmm.
because the animals, that depends on the whether it's a big animal or a smaller animal. There may be certain variations with conditions, but the process is almost same.
Yes. There is one another question. Micro meat also another choice, for example, Quran. Do we expect some more like that in the near future?
I didn't understand what is myco meat. What is
Micro
the
meats are analogous meat. Analogous.
analog? So the meat analogs are there. So there are the now trend is going on vegetarian trend. So there may be a possibility of getting a good market. But now the celebrities are now promoting the vegan.
Yes.
So the possibility is there.
Yes. There is one another question. What is the difference between the game meat and normal meat processing?
Game meat, what I understand with the word, game meat must be used for the meat which consumes by the sports persons, I hope. that will maybe a game meat. So that will be high proteinous or a protein enriched meat. And the normal meat will have a proteins of around uh, 10 to 15%. So it will have a higher proteins.
Yes, anyone?
I think Vaibhav, can I just add into that thing?
Yes, yes. Game, yes.
In relation to the question which has been asked for game meat and normal meat, say normal meat generally goes for if we are having any butchery or abattoir. If it is a commercial one, we call it as a normal meat. The game meat, what we are just considering here is the wild animals. Say suppose
Yes,
if you are going into some shikar or something, and if you are just catching an animal and if you are doing over there, that is called as game meat. It's a wild meat type only,
yes,
nothing else.
yes, yes. Correct, correct. Yes. Any questions from the participants? Is there any questions? Yes. If you want to ask any question, you can ask the same later on. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Bhotmange, sir. And thank you everyone for attending, all participants for attending this online faculty development program entitled Trends in Food Processing and Preservation Technologies. If you have any other questions, you can please contact Dr. I.S. Uchan sir later on. And on behalf of Department of Technology, Shivaji University, Kolhapur, and our organizing committee members, I would like to give a special thanks to Professor Dr. Bhotmange sir. Yes, Irano sir, if you want to add anything.
Uh, from on behalf of Department of Technology, I'm very much thankful to Professor Bhotmange sir for giving us such a knowledgeable lectures on this meat poultry technology. And sir is our guide, and he was the HOD now in the LIT, and that time he used to teach us. So we have learned these things from heart, and we know the sir from last 10 to 20 years. So I think this will be beneficial to all these participants too, and they will use their for their knowledge upgradation too. So sir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and delivering the lectures.
Yes,
Thank you, thank you. Nowadays, this meat processing is automatic now. There
yes,
is no handling of the individuals.
yes,
Only up to slaughtering and de-skinning. There is a manual one. Rest is the automatic plants are
yes, yes. Dear participant, the certificate shall be issued to those participants who are registered on Atal portal, okay, and attend the program with minimum 80% of the attendance and the score minimum 60% marks in the test. Iran sir, can we proceed further?
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Yes. If you want
Yes.
to add,
Good morning, sir. Good
yes,
afternoon.
yes.
there. Good afternoon, good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
Yes, I am fine. How
Yes,
are
sir.
you?
Definitely, sir. As you have covered the most of the basic things regarding the meat
Yes, yes.
and poultry processing related things, and as all of us we knows that we are getting the good earning from the export market, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very good thing that livestock and everything you have covered, and there is a lot of potential in this particular segment, and it is one of the can say the potential thing that we can earn the lot of currency from the export market, sir. Sir,
Yes.
is there any norms and regulation now upgraded for the exporting the meat and poultry?
Yes, there are the norms laid down by FSSAI. We have to follow the FSSAI norms. Because it was previously the milk and milk product, meat and meat product orders. Now it is being merged with the FSSAI. So we have to
Yeah.
follow that.
In PFA, it was order was there. Meat and meat
Yeah,
product
that
order.
was meat
Right.
and meat product order was there.
Right. Thank
There
you
are
very
laws.
much. Thank you very much, sir. And sir, as all of us we know that the Asia's largest Devnar is the one of the largest abattoir, which
Yeah.
is situated in the Mumbai itself. And in poultry segment, there are so many other players like Venkis is there, Godrej is there, Sugula is there, and even Baramati Agro. They are also doing very well in present scenario. So that's why it is again very good opportunity to learn us through the whatever the status of that this company, what new products they are doing.
But
And
see, Lokhande, see these companies contributes only 25% of the local market.
Yes.
75% market is unorganized.
Unorganized, yeah, correct.
We go to our locality corner and purchase the meat there.
Yes.
So that is not being counted in these by these big industries. All
right,
these
sir.
big industries are the export houses, and maximum domestic usage is from our unorganized sector. They
Right,
only
right, sir.
they only go to this slaughterhouse of the respective corporations, cut only one or two animal, and rest animals they cut at their places itself.
Right.
So that is not being counted.
Okay. Definitely, as sir, you have mentioned that this is again the unorganized segment, then definitely there is a lot of potential to introduce in this particular segment. Thank you very much, sir, for inciting.
Yes. Once again, Professor Dr. Bhotmange, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Professor Dr. Sao, sir. Dear participant, please wait for a few minutes. Professor Dr. A.K. Sao, sir, will join within a few minutes.
Thank you, sir. So participant will meet at 3:30 for the next lecture
Next lecture, yeah.
of
You can join.
Professor Dr. A.K. Sahu, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhotmange, sir.
Thank
After
you,
very
Thank you,
long
thank
time,
sir.
we have met on the virtual platform.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes. Dear participant, we will meet at 3:30, sharp 3:30.